In the hushed corners of forgotten villages, where rituals linger longer than memory, and ashes are swept under temple floors, there are drums that no longer call the living, only echo the cries of the dead. This is Whispers of Asia, a place where ancient spirits still speak through cursed temples, forbidden rites, and the quiet things no one dares remember. Tonight, we journey into the shadows of Thai funerary magic, a tale of sacred sound turned sinister, of a brother and the drum that refused to fall silent, a soul trapped, a ritual broken, and a rhythm that opens the doorway between this world and the next. This is the story of the spirit inside the funeral drum, Glongsop Miwinyan. Listen closely, because some drums don't need hands to play. They only need someone to remember. The sky over the village of Ban Nong Luang was unnaturally still. The wind did not move. The crows did not cry. Even the dogs that roamed the edge of the rice paddies had retreated into silence, as if they too were paying respects. A girl had died. Not just any girl, but Molly, 17 years old, beloved by all, and now burning slowly beneath the funeral canopy, her skin crackling in the sacred fire that licked at the air like it had a hunger. The firelight danced in Lek's eyes as he raised the mallets. He was her brother, younger by 2 years, slim, quiet, careful, the kind of boy who learned by listening, who watched before he acted. And now, he was the one chosen to beat the tapon, the double-headed funeral drum, as her soul passed into the unseen. The tapon was no ordinary instrument. It stood taller than a man's chest, carved from blackened jackfruit wood with rawhide stretched tight across its faces. When struck properly, it let out a deep, trembling voice, like thunder beneath the earth. It was said the drum guided the spirit of the dead. Its rhythm formed a path in the unseen world where spirits wandered lost. One beat to open the gate, one to summon the ancestors, one to call the guides, and then silence. But this drum had not been used in over 20 years, because this drum was feared. Lek did not know why, only that the old monks avoided it, only that when Molly's funeral was arranged and no drummer could be found, the abbot, with eyes sunken from age and burden, turned to Lek and said, "She was your sister. Only you can call her home." And so Lek stood beneath the white funeral cloth, sweat collecting beneath his brows, and raised the mallets with hands that trembled. The villagers watched in complete silence. The cremation fires hissed, casting long shadows. The monks chanted low from their cushions, their voices a drone that faded beneath the sound when Lek brought the mallets down. Boom! A pause. Boom! 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 The earth vibrated beneath his feet. He followed the rhythm the abbot had whispered into his ear. 3 for the gate, 1 for the soul, 2 for the ancestors. Then silence. But when Lek stopped, the sound didn't. A low, faint echo followed, one that hadn't come from his hands. He turned, but no one else was near the drum. The villagers looked confused, some muttered, the monks whispered. The abbot's face had gone pale. That night, Lek could not sleep. Molly was gone, and yet he could still hear her. Not her voice, not her laugh, but the drum. At first, it came faintly, just a soft knock like wood tapping wood. He thought it was the house shifting in the heat, or rats in the roof beams. But the rhythm was too deliberate. Boom, boom, pause, boom. He sat up. Silence. Then again, boom, boom, boom. He got out of bed and walked barefoot. The moon was hidden behind a thick layer of clouds, but the air shimmered with heat. The forest around the village was pitch black, the bamboo trees swaying ever so slightly, though there was no wind. And from the direction of the temple, nestled just beyond the rice fields, came the unmistakable beat of the tapon. Faint, slow, uneven, as if someone was playing it with broken hands. The next morning, Lek returned to the temple. The cremation grounds were already swept clean, ashes raked and scattered. The abbot stood by the altar, murmuring prayers to a statue of Pra Malai, the Buddhist monk said to guide souls out of hell. When Lek asked him about the sound, the old monk looked away. "The drum is sacred. You must not speak of it again." Lek frowned. "But it played after I stopped. Last night, too, I heard it." The abbot turned sharply, with something cold and ancient in his eyes. "Then you heard a warning, and you must listen." The village had always whispered about that drum. Some said it was cursed, others said it was possessed. Many years ago, a young monk, barely older than Lek now, had taken his own life within the temple. A rope, a beam, no note. Suicide was forbidden in Thai Buddhism. It was believed that such souls became pret, the tormented hungry ghosts, cursed to wander until someone dared to offer them peace. But no one had, and the drum used for his funeral, it had never been burned, as custom demanded. It had been stored instead, feared, forgotten, until Molly's funeral, until Lek.
That night, Lek sat beside the drum. He waited until the monks had gone to sleep, until the temple halls were quiet, until the last candle had melted to its base. He crept barefoot into the cremation hall, where the drum stood against the wall, just as he'd left it. He stared at it for a long time. It looked like any other instrument, old perhaps, but not menacing. Still, it felt wrong. The air around it was heavy, charged, as if it were not wood and skin and rope, but a living thing, breathing, waiting. He reached out and touched the rim. The drum was cold, too cold. He placed his ear against the hide. Boom. He jerked back, heart pounding. No one had struck it, but it had played, right beneath his skin. He didn't tell anyone, not the abbot, not the monks, not even the woman who sold him rice each morning and asked gently how he was coping. Because how do you tell someone your dead sister is speaking through a funeral drum? So he tried to forget, but the drum would not be forgotten. A week later, Lek began to dream. In the dream, he stood in the temple courtyard, beneath a blood-red moon. The trees twisted upward like hands. The wind carried chanting, but the words were wrong, backward, inverted, like monks speaking through water. Molly was there. Her mouth was open, but no sound came out, only drum beats. Her skin was pale,
but not dead, just drained, as if something had taken part of her. Behind her, the drum floated in the air, suspended by invisible threads, and each time it beat, her body twitched. One hand raised, one foot dragged. Then the dream would break, and Lek would awake with his hand raised. He began to keep a notebook, a record of the beats he heard at night. He noticed patterns, repeating sequences, certain rhythms that made his room colder, others that filled his ears with whispers, one that made the rice pot crack in half. The drum was saying something, calling, and sometimes answering. Then came the night when the drum called his name, not in words, but in beats. L-E-K. Boom, boom, pause, boom. Again and again, until his ears bled. When Lek told the abbot what was happening, the monk grew quiet. He lit 3 sticks of incense. He whispered a prayer over a folded lotus leaf. Then he said, "I was there when the monk died. I saw what he did." And the old man began to tell the truth, that the monk was no ordinary disciple. He had studied forbidden rituals, not from scripture, but from something older. He believed sound was power, that rhythm could bind spirit to object, that a drum, if played correctly, could become a cage. He had experimented on animals, on bones, on dolls made of clay and blood, and when the temple elders tried to expel him, he took his own life, but not before embedding his spirit into the drum, as a final act of defiance, as a curse. "We should have destroyed it," the abbot whispered, voice shaking. "But we were afraid, and now you have played it." Lek stared at the monk. His heart beat in rhythm with the memory of the drum. Boom, boom, pause, boom. Molly's rhythm, still echoing, still trapped. And Lek understood then, not in words, but in feeling. His sister soul had not moved on. She was caught, bound inside the same cursed wood that held the monk. And the drum was not just an instrument anymore. It was a prison. The old abbot had never told the full story to anyone, not even to the other monks, not even to the village elders who donated rice and incense each week and helped repaint the faded murals on the temple walls. Some truths, he believed, should be buried deeper than ashes. But that night, as Lek knelt across from him in the flickering glow of a single oil lamp, the weight of what had been hidden finally pressed too hard to keep within. The abbot's hands trembled as he poured tea into a cracked porcelain cup. He did not offer any to Lek. He only spoke, and Lek listened. "His name was Fra Cham," the abbot began, voice hoarse with age. "He arrived here young, no family, no roots. He said he had been called by dreams. We thought him devout." The tea sat untouched. The room smelled faintly of smoke, old books and mold, the scent of a place where secrets lived. At first, he studied like any novice. He rose early, he chanted the sutras, he cleaned the altars with quiet reverence. But as time passed, he grew different. The abbot's eyes did not blink. They stared through Lek, as if watching a memory unfold behind his face. He began to speak of sound, not as music, but as power. He said the old chants were more than words, that they had weight, that every syllable echoed in the bones of the dead. Lek felt a cold breeze pass through the room, though the windows were shut. He started spending hours with the funeral drum, alone, beating strange patterns, not the traditional rhythms. These were inverted, unnatural. The abbot paused, then leaned closer. And then the animals started dying. At first, it was small things, birds found stiff beneath the Bodhi tree, frogs bloated and bleeding near the prayer hall. But then, a dog, old, blind, harmless, was found with its body twisted unnaturally, spine arched backward, eyes wide and glassy, as if it had seen something it couldn't unsee. Fracham said nothing, but he walked differently, slower, as if listening to something only he could hear. At night, some monks swore they heard chanting in languages not spoken in any scripture. The others were afraid, the abbot admitted, but I was young then. I believed he was simply lost, that we could bring him back. But then the temple bell cracked, and Fracham was found kneeling in the drum hole, not chanting, not praying, but whispering into the drum skin like it was alive. One morning, the novice who brought Fracham his morning water found him hanging from the rafters of the east wing. No note, no signs of struggle, just a twisted rope and a body still warm. It was a suicide, the worst possible death for a monk. In Thai Buddhist belief, suicide severs the soul from merit. It is a violent interruption of karma. The soul becomes lost, unable to reincarnate or ascend. It lingers, it hungers, it haunts. The temple, in shock, followed the rites as best it could. A hurried funeral, whispered mantras, the usual rituals of release. But they made a mistake. They used the same drum, the one he whispered to, the one he spent years shaping with forbidden rhythms. That was the last time it was played, the abbot said, his voice nearly breaking, until you played it for Mali. Lek couldn't speak. The image of the monk, lifeless, swinging in silence, echoed in his mind like the drum's beat. He imagined the rope creaking, the drum below, listening, waiting. You said he embedded spirits into objects, he whispered. What does that mean? The abbot's gaze darkened. In some strands of Thai animism, it is believed that strong emotion, especially at the moment of death, can become rooted in the material world, a curse, a possession, a shadow. He sought to control this, to trap souls inside things, not to harm them, but to use them. To use them for what? Power, longevity, influence? I do not know. He never finished his work, or perhaps he did, but at the cost of his own soul. The room seemed to shrink. The air was heavy. The light of the oil lamp trembled. And Mali? Lek finally asked. The abbot hesitated. If the drum is still bound to him, and she passed through it, then her spirit may have been caught in the snare. Lek returned to his room with that sentence ringing in his ears like a curse. A snare. That's what the drum was. Not a guide, not a sacred instrument, a trap. And Mali, bright, gentle Mali, was caught inside. Because of him. Because he played it. Because no one else would. He curled into himself beneath the mosquito net and tried not to cry, but the tears came anyway. And in the silence of the night, the drum answered him. Boom, boom, boom. The next morning, Lek didn't go to the chanting hall. He didn't offer alms.
He walked barefoot to the far edge of the temple grounds, where the wild grass grew tall and untrimmed, and the path faded into forest. There, beneath an overgrown Bodhi tree, stood the old cremation drum shed, where the drum had once been stored, before Mali, before him. It was locked, but the padlock was rusted, and the wood had softened from rain. He forced it open. Inside, everything was covered in dust, old funeral candles, broken fans, the remnants of forgotten rites. But there, hanging from a rafter, was the cracked length of rope, still stained, still twisted, and on the ground beneath it, a circle burned into the wood, dark, charred, almost musical in its pattern, a rhythm carved into the earth. Lek touched the mark, and in that instant the world dropped away. He was no longer in the shed. He stood in the middle of a vast field of smoke where drums floated in the air like dead moons. Each one pulsed with a heartbeat, some slow, some fast, some screaming. Molly stood beside one, reaching out. Her lips moved, but the sound was swallowed. And behind her, eyes black as ash, stood the monk, Fracham, watching, waiting, smiling. Lek gasped and fell back. The vision faded. He was in the shed again, but the circle beneath him still glowed faintly, like coals that refused to die. He ran, not to the abbot, but to the one place he'd never dared go before, the home of Mayanim, the blind woman the village whispered about, the one who they said had once been a temple witch, a Mai Chi who read omens in candle smoke and cast spirits into pots. Exiled long ago, but never forgotten. If the monks feared her and the villagers avoided her, then perhaps she was the only one who could see what I could not. She answered the door before he knocked, as if she'd been expecting him. Her eyes were pale, not white, but a soft, milky blue like river stones. She did not smile. She only stepped aside and said, "The drum has chosen you."
The home of Ma Neem stood where the forest met the marsh. No one tended the path that led to it. The soil was damp, thick with fallen leaves, and choked with gnarled roots that seemed to grab at the ankles of the unwelcome. But Lek walked with purpose, because now he believed what the monks would not say out loud, that his sister was still here, not in body, but bound in rhythm. Ma Neem was unlike any woman Lek had ever met. Her hair was long, gray, and matted into ropes that trailed down her back like vines. Her face was a map of time, lines etched deep around her mouth and brow, but her posture remained firm, as if she carried some unseen weight with practiced grace. Her blindness did not slow her. She moved through her home by sound and scent, by memory and instinct. She poured tea into a small black cup and set it before him on the low wooden table, as if she knew exactly where he sat. Then she said, without any hesitation, "The drum is not haunted. It is hungry." Lek didn't speak. He only stared. Ma Neem smiled without warmth. "You feel it, don't you? That weight behind your ears when it plays? That hum in your bones when no one else hears a sound?" Lek nodded. "It breathes now," he said quietly. "I touched it once and felt lungs, not skin, like it was alive." Ma Neem turned her head, as if listening to something beyond the walls. "It's not alive," she said, "but something within it is.
something that used to be human and something that never was. She pulled a small cloth bundle from beneath the floorboards. Inside was a page, yellowed, torn, and written in red ink. Not Thai, not Pali, something older. Curving glyphs that shimmered faintly in the lamplight. Ma Neem's fingers traced the edge. There are drums older than temples, older than prayer. Before people begged the heavens for mercy, they beat skins stretched over hollowed wood to call the spirits of the earth, to beg for rain, for crops, for protection. But some, she looked toward him, her pale eyes eerily fixed despite their blindness. Some beat to command the dead. The rhythm, she explained, was everything. A drum played with reverence could open a path. A drum played with greed could open a prison. And Prakam had learned a rhythm no monk should know, a rhythm that called not only the soul of the dead, but their essence, their memory, their sorrow, their power, and trapped it in the object of sound. The drum does not breathe, she said. The souls inside do. That night, Lek returned to the temple with something new in his hands. A charcoal stick wrapped in red thread. Ma Neem had instructed him, mark the drum and watch what bleeds. He waited until the monks were asleep, the halls dark and silent, the moonlight spilling through the carved window panels. The Taphone sat in the funeral hall, unmoved, but it felt different now. Not just heavy, but expectant, as if it had been waiting for him to return. He took the stick, knelt before it, and whispered, "If you are alive, show me." He drew a single line across the drum's face. Nothing. He waited. Then, a drop. Not ink, not sap. Blood. Dark, thick, from within the drum. He gasped and stumbled backward, knocking over a tray of candle offerings. The sound echoed through the hall, and something inside the drum responded. A breath, a wheeze, then a beat. Boom. Soft, but it shuddered the floorboards. Boom. Faster, more desperate. He covered his ears. It was not just rhythm, it was speech. Not words, but emotion, fear, anger, grief, a plea. He fled the hall, but the sound followed him. Not in air, but in memory, as if the beat was now inside him. He returned to his room and pressed his hands over his chest. His heart was beating too fast, too hard. But then he realized it was beating in sync with the drum. In the days that followed, Lek stopped sleeping. Each time he closed his eyes, he found himself back inside the smoky dreamscape. The field of floating drums, the endless red sky, the whispering winds that carried no sound, only pressure. And always, Molly was there. Not dead, not alive, just trapped. Her eyes hollow, her fingers raw from scratching the inside of something unseen. She opened her mouth to scream, but only drum beats came out. Lek would wake drenched in sweat, hands curled as if still holding mallets. He begged the abbot for answers, but the old monk was slipping now, too weak to rise from his bed. His eyes fluttered open only once, and he whispered, "She is not the only one. There are others, too many." Then he fell into silence again. It was Ma Neem who gave him the final truth. When he returned to her hut, desperate and wide-eyed, she placed her palm over his chest. She smiled almost sadly. "You're linked now,"
she said. "The drum marked you. Its rhythm is yours." "Can I free her? Can I get her out?" he asked. Manim didn't answer at first. Then she opened a drawer and pulled out a single piece of parchment. It showed a reverse funeral rhythm, something never written, only whispered, a sin to even acknowledge. "You must play it, backward, the rhythm of return," she said. Lek stared at the paper. The markings seemed to squirm on the page like worms in ash. "But that would break the law. That's forbidden. It opens the veil in reverse. It undoes the rite." "Exactly," Manim said, "and not just for her." That night, Lek did not sleep. He sat before the drum again, heart pounding. The temple was silent. The moon was full. He lifted the mallets, but did not strike. Not yet. Because now he knew, if he played the reversal, he might save Molly, but he would also release every soul trapped inside, and one of them had never been human to begin with.
The mallets hovered above the drum. Lek's hands trembled, not from fear, but from something deeper, something instinctual, as if every part of his body, from marrow to muscle, knew that this rhythm was never meant to be played. He stared at the parchment Manim had given him. The forbidden rhythm, drawn in spirals, not lines. Unlike the linear chants of traditional rites, this one curled inward like a trap, a rhythm that didn't lead the soul away from earth, but pulled it back. He memorized it, because he would not dare bring this cursed script into the temple. And when the candle beside him flickered low, he struck the drum. Boom, boom, pause, boom, 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 reverse. He felt the air bend, not move, bend, like sound was being sucked into itself. The walls around him didn't shake. They listened. He continued, each beat precise, heart locked into the spiral. Boom, 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 pause, boom. The temperature dropped sharply. The drum pulsed under his hands. And then, as he hit the final note, the world split. The funeral hall vanished. He stood in a dim plain of red fog, just like in his dreams, but this time it wasn't sleep. This was real. Lek could feel the ground beneath him, though it wasn't dirt or stone, but something soft and shifting, like ash soaked in blood. And in front of him, the drums floated. Hundreds, no thousands. Some cracked, some pristine, some with faces stretched beneath the skins, mouths frozen in screams. All beating, each with its own rhythm, each calling. Mali's drum was among them. He could feel it. The beat was familiar, even in chaos. He ran toward it, ducking between the others, the sound overwhelming but eerily ordered. It was like being lost in a city made of heartbeats. When he reached hers, it was smaller than he remembered, faintly glowing, and inside its skin, her face. Eyes closed, lips pressed tight, hands pressed outward as if trying to push through. He raised the mallet again and whispered, "I'm here. I'm going to bring you back." But before he struck, a voice, low, male, echoing from everywhere at once. "If you open one, you open all." Lek turned and saw him, Prakam, but not as a monk. This figure was twisted, robes hanging like burnt paper, his face blackened with soot and ink. His eyes were empty, holes through which something darker peered. "She's at peace. Leave her be," Prakam said. Lek clenched his fists.
You killed her. A pause. A grin. No, I merely offered her a place. He raised his hands. The drums behind Lek started to turn. Their rhythm grew louder, discordant, rising like a storm of hooves and teeth. Lek struck Mali's drum anyway. Once, twice, a third time. The surface rippled, and Mali's eyes opened. She screamed without sound, but her mouth formed one word: "Run." The red fog collapsed. Lek woke on the floor of the funeral hall, coughing violently, blood dripping from his nose. The candle was out. His mallets were gone, but the drum remained. And now there were handprints on the inside of the skin. For the next 3 nights, he didn't sleep. He didn't need to, because the drum kept playing on its own. The reversed rhythm echoed at all hours, even when he was far from the temple. It followed him, into the rice fields, into the marketplace, into the dreams of other monks who began to whisper of dark omens. And then it grew louder. Even the villagers heard it. They said it was a warning. Some left offerings of raw eggs and white flowers at the temple gates, trying to appease whatever had been disturbed. Others begged the abbot to destroy the drum. But the abbot was now silent. His fever had worsened. He spoke only in riddles, sometimes not at all, sometimes in rhythms. Meinam summoned Lek back. He arrived at her hut breathless, shaking. She offered him water. He refused it. "I saw him. The monk, he's in there, and he's still in control." Meinam nodded slowly. He never left. He used his death as a doorway, and now you've opened it wider. "I had to. Mali was trapped." Meinam looked toward the forest, her face unreadable. "Do you know what he was really trying to do?" Lek shook his head. She stood and walked to the back of her hut. There, hidden behind a layer of ash, was a second drum, smaller, cracked, covered in red thread. This was his prototype. He gave it to me before he died, said I would understand later. She struck it, and Lek fell to his knees because the beat was inside his skull, a rhythm of pain, of hunger, of spirits pulled by force into places they were never meant to rest. And from the drum's cracked surface came a voice, faint, terrified. "Please let me go." Lek recognized the voice. It wasn't Mali. It was a monk who died 2 years ago, the one struck by lightning while meditating under the Bodhi tree. His soul had been stolen, not released, and this drum still held it. Meinam placed a knife into Lek's hands. "There's more than one drum now," she whispered, "and they are spreading." That night, Lek returned to the temple with 2 goals: destroy the prototype and free Mali before more were pulled in. He crept into the drum hall. The main tapon stood there silent now, but it watched him. He could feel it. Its skin twitched when he approached it. He took a step closer, and then the mallets rose into the air on their own. They hovered, then struck. Once, twice, the reverse rhythm played by invisible hands. The wind howled, the windows blew open, and from the drum's mouth came a voice. "If you will not keep us, you will join us." Lek screamed and struck the drum with the knife. It didn't slice. The blade bent. The skin pulsed outward like lungs gasping, and a black mist burst forth, slamming Lek into the far wall. When he opened his eyes, the room was filled with spirits, each with no mouth,
only hands, all beating.
The temple would not speak of the incident. No one saw the spirits. No one heard the drum play itself. No one admitted to feeling the tremor shake the cremation hall. But Lek had bruises across his back, a cracked rib, and blood beneath his fingernails that was not his own. The abbot, still bedridden, refused visitors. The monks kept their heads low during morning alms, their chants hurried, eyes never meeting his. Even the novice, who had once asked Lek to teach him the funeral rhythm, now avoided him entirely, crossing to the other side of the courtyard like Lek was a shadow to be avoided. He had become something between orphan and omen, a boy marked by rhythm, and the drum had gone silent again. Not peaceful, just watching, waiting. May Nim burned incense in 7 clay bowls and whispered something into each as the flames flickered and hissed. She didn't speak until the room was full of smoke, her voice almost consumed by the crackling. She used them, she said. Every funeral, every soul, each one layered into the drum like skin over bone. Lek sat cross-legged across from her, nursing his broken rib. There has to be a record, he said. A list, something the monks hid, if they knew he was doing this. They didn't want to know. That's how evil hides in temples, in silence and in duty. That night, Lek broke into the temple's sealed archives. The key he used wasn't a key at all, but a rusted chisel once used to carve Naga scales into an unfinished statue. The lock gave after a few hard twists. The archive room was older than the rest of the temple. Its walls were black with age and smoke, its floor uneven, and its shelves lined with crumbling ledgers, palm leaf manuscripts, and brittle funeral scrolls tied with red thread. It smelled like forgotten prayers. Lek lit a single oil lamp, shielding the flame with his hand as he moved carefully through the maze of silence. He didn't know what he was looking for, only that something had to exist, and he found it near the back, buried beneath 4 cracked volumes of Pramalai's Visions of Hell. It was bound in dark green cloth, nearly falling apart. There was no title, but when he opened it, he felt cold. Inside were names, dates, causes of death, and rhythms. Each death listed not just with time and ritual, but with a coded pattern. 3 dots, 2 slashes, 1 spiral. Each page was a funeral. Each page was a song. Lek flipped faster. The names blurred. So many children. So many who died of fevers and accidents and drownings that didn't seem accidental anymore. And beside each entry, performed by Prakam. Sometimes a note was scribbled in the margins. Spirit didn't leave, chant repeated 3 times. Rope drum, contained fully. Marked. Then he turned to one page that stopped him cold. Mali. Her name. Written in newer ink. Date. Last week. Officiant. Lek. Novice. Not ordained. Performed using drum number 13. A final note, scribbled messily. Incomplete release. Vessel reaction abnormal. His hands trembled. She had been catalogued, filed away, like a specimen, a failed experiment. He tore the page out, folded it, and that's when he saw the last few pages of the book, pages that should have been blank. They were drawn on in charcoal. Symbols he didn't recognize, circles within circles, a tree with no leaves, a figure hanging upside down from a crescent moon. The final page was different. It showed a drum,
split open like a cracked skull, and from it poured shadows, clawed and grinning. Something moved behind him. He turned, lamp raised, but no one was there. Just the sound of a heartbeat, not his own. Boom, boom, pause, boom. The rhythm of the reversal, playing from the book. He slammed it shut, but the sound didn't stop. It thudded inside his teeth, inside his bones. He dropped the book and ran. But as he did, he saw the shadows on the wall move without him. He returned to Mei Nim's hut before dawn. He laid the ripped page before her like a confession. They knew. They let him do this. They let him use her. Mei Nim didn't answer immediately. She touched the page, and then her shoulders slumped. "This isn't the end," she said. "This is the middle." She explained the markings. Prakam's rituals had gone deeper than death rites. He had begun carving a spiritual map, binding spirits into objects to build a network of power. The drum wasn't just a vessel, it was a hub. And Molly So was caught at the very center of it all. "To get her out," Mei Nim said, "you must break the pattern." "How?" "By playing it wrong." Lek stared. "But if I disrupt the pattern?" "You unweave the net," Mei Nim said. "You collapse the structure. But," she paused, "every spirit in that drum will be unbound, not just hers." That night, the drum was waiting for him. It had been moved, not by hands, but by will. It now stood in the center of the cremation hall, lit by no fire, yet glowing faintly. Lek stepped toward it, his heart already beating the rhythm he feared. He lifted the mallets, and instead of the reversal, he played something wrong, clumsy, jagged, a beat that should never exist. And the drum screamed. Not sound, not noise, but a chorus of the damned. The wood cracked, smoke hissed from its seams, and inside the spin, faces. So many, screaming, pleading, and Molly's among them. But this time, her mouth was open, and her voice was clear. "Don't save me like this." The skin of the drum began to tear. Blood poured from its base, and Lek dropped the mallets, because he realized breaking the pattern wasn't enough. Something stronger was needed. Not sound, not symbols, but sacrifice. The sun never rose the next morning, or at least it didn't feel like it did. Lek sat alone beneath the temple's long eaves, the cracked drum behind him, still weeping sap-dark blood. He had stayed there all night, waiting for the spirits to return, for Molly's face to appear again in the drum's torn hide. But nothing came, only silence. And silence, Lek had learned, was never empty. It was full of waiting, full of listening, full of things that knew how to hide behind quiet. The monks refused to speak to him now. They left his rice bowl untouched during morning alms. One muttered a single word under his breath as he passed. "Pete, unclean." Another whispered, "The boy has the rhythm in his bones." Even the abbot, once so gentle and wise, now stared at him through fevered eyes like Lek was a ghost walking ahead of his own death. Mei Nim came at dusk. She hadn't left her home in years, but that evening she walked barefoot across the fields, her gray robes dragging through wet rice and ash, her eyes blind, but her steps sure. She entered the temple grounds without bowing, without asking.
She walked straight to the drum, laid her palm on it, and whispered something Lek didn't understand. Then she turned to him. Her voice was low, heavy. "She is unraveling." Lek's stomach clenched. What does that mean? Mei Nim looked toward the dying light of the horizon. When a soul is bound too long, it forgets who it was. The pieces rot. Memory first, then mercy, then form. So she'll disappear? Mei Nim shook her head. Worse, she'll become something that wants to stay. The next night, Lek heard Molly's voice for the first time. Not in a dream, not through the drum, but in the empty corridor outside his room. It came as a whisper, soft, hesitant. "Lek, don't look at me." He froze. His candle flickered violently. Then the air grew colder. The door creaked. He turned. She stood in the hallway, barefoot, hair soaked, wearing the white funeral robe she was cremated in. But her face, it wasn't hers anymore. The features were there, but twisted, like something trying to remember how to look human. Her mouth smiled before her eyes did, and her hands, they didn't stop trembling. "You shouldn't have called me back," she whispered. "You didn't finish the rhythm." Lek backed away. "Molly, I'm trying to help you." Her head tilted slightly, eyes wide and distant. "I remember the fire, and I remember pain, but now I feel nothing. Is that what death is?" He stepped toward her, just once. She hissed, not in anger, but in agony. Her skin began to crack, faint black lines blooming beneath her jaw, crawling up toward her eyes, as if something inside was splintering. Mei Nim found him the next morning collapsed in front of the altar. He hadn't slept, he hadn't blinked. He was mumbling, "She's breaking. I saw her. She's not whole." Mei Nim helped him stand. "You only played the outer rhythm," she said, "but the monk's ritual had layers, binding, locking, marking, echoing. To reverse it fully, you need the full pattern, and you only have the surface." Lek's voice cracked. "Then where's the rest?" Mei Nim closed her eyes, and her voice trembled. "It's in her." They went to the cremation site. Mei Nim walked in circles, barefoot in the ash, until she found it, a patch of earth that hadn't cooled. The soil there steamed faintly, though the fire had been out for days. She knelt, dug with her hands, and pulled something from the dirt. Not bone, not ash, but a small wooden talisman, roughly carved, marked with the same glyphs as the monk's forbidden book. A drum, tiny, crude, but alive. It pulsed in Lek's hand like a beating heart. "This is the tether," Mei Nim said. He anchored her to it during the ritual, not to set her free, but to keep the network intact. Lek stared at the talisman. He didn't need to ask what to do. He crushed it. The ground shook, and the wind howled, not from the sky, but from beneath. The temple bells rang on their own, and from the funeral hall, the drum began to scream. Not beat, scream. He ran to it. It had changed, grown darker, larger.
The torn skin had healed over, but now bore symbols all over its surface, symbols that pulsed with light. It wasn't a drum anymore. It was a womb, and something inside was kicking. He picked up the mallets, and for the first time, he played not to release, not to reverse, but to collapse. He played wrong, each note broken, each beat staggered. He let his pain bleed through the rhythm, his guilt, his love, his rage, his grief. He screamed her name with every strike, "Molly! Molly! Molly!" And then silence. The drum split, not shattered, opened, like flesh. Inside, not blood, not bone, but her, kneeling, shaking, eyes closed, hair floating upward as if underwater. And then she breathed, one soft, shuddering breath. Lek reached for her, and she looked up. "Is it over?" she asked. He nodded and lied, because he could already feel the others rising behind her. Hundreds, thousands, unbound, unleashed. Maynim pulled him back. "You saved her soul," she said, "but the gate is open now. The others are coming, and they are not kind."
Molly didn't remember how she died. Not anymore. She remembered pain, yes. She remembered smoke, the moment her breath stopped, the sensation of floating above her own body. But the part after that, the place she was kept, the space between breath and nothing, was fading like chalk in the rain. And what filled her now was silence. Not peace, just a hollow, echoing stillness that clung to her skin like cold oil. Lek sat beside her, holding her hand, though it was barely warm. She was breathing. Her eyes were open, but something was gone. She didn't cry. She didn't speak unless spoken to. She stared at things that weren't there. The abbot died the next morning. His breath gave out as the sun cracked the horizon. No chanting, no monks at his side, just a long sigh, like something inside him had finally given up the weight it had carried. When Lek asked to see his body, the temple refused. When Lek asked if they would play the drum for him, they laughed bitterly. "No more drums," said one of the younger monks. "We'll burn him in silence, as he asked." But that silence didn't last, because that night, the drum beat itself again. Only once, but it was enough. The next day, Lek followed Molly back to the cremation site. She didn't speak, but her feet carried her there as if drawn by some invisible thread. She stood in the middle of the charred ground, beneath the scorched funeral canopy, and bent down, gently brushing aside soot with her fingers. Then she paused. There was something beneath the ashes. Lek knelt beside her. Together, they unearthed a bone talisman, thin, brittle, and etched with the same cursed glyphs from Pra Kam's journal. It pulsed faintly in the light, not with warmth, but with memory. As soon as Lek touched it, the air turned heavy, and the wind whispered, not words, but a beat. Boom, 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 pause, boom. It was the monk's rhythm, but not from the drum. This time, it was coming from the ground, from below the temple. Lek brought the talisman to Maynim. She didn't touch it. She only frowned. "He left more than one tether," she whispered. "Each soul he took, he planted something behind.
Like roots? Lek asked. My Nim nodded. Like a tree made of grief, and now it's growing. That night, Lek dreamed of the temple. But it wasn't the temple he knew. It was taller, older, covered in vines, crumbling under the weight of prayers never answered. Inside, drums hung from every beam, swinging gently, though there was no wind. And in the center of the main hall stood Pra Kam, not as a ghost, not as a monk, but as something else, something thin and long, like a shadow that had forgotten it once had a body. You took her, the thing whispered, voice leaking like smoke. She was mine. Lek opened his mouth to speak, but nothing came out, only ashes. He awoke coughing, his bed sheets covered in soot, the talisman on the floor beside him now cracked in half. He brought it to the funeral pyre and burned it, but the beat didn't stop. It had spread. Over the next 3 days, strange things began to happen. The temple dogs refused to go near the drum hall. A novice began humming the monk's rhythm in his sleep and could not stop. A statue of the Buddha in the North Hall was found with black tears running from its eyes. Then one night, a fire broke out, not from lightning, not from candles, from the drum itself. It burned from the inside out, and when the flames died down, the drum remained, untouched, unscorched, but changed. Its surface was now veined like flesh, its ropes twisted like tendons, and the air around it pulsed like it was breathing again. Lek knew what it meant. The gate had not been closed, it had been widened, and now something was using Molly's escape as a trail of breadcrumbs. The monk's magic had been designed to trap, but it had never considered what would happen when the prison was opened from both sides. My Nim summoned him urgently. Her hut was darker than usual. The candles barely flickered, and her voice was quiet, afraid. The drum is no longer just a vessel. It's a mouth, and it's hungry. They returned together to the cremation site. Molly followed without question. When they arrived, the ground beneath the drum hall had begun to sink, not from erosion, but from pressure, like something underneath was rising. My Nim pressed her hand to the earth, then gasped. "There's something beneath the temple," she whispered, "a root system made of bone." Lek grabbed a shovel and began to dig. Hours passed. The monks did not interfere. By nightfall, he had unearthed the chamber, a hollow beneath the temple foundations. Inside, dozens of broken drums, charred bones, old ropes, and something else, a scroll, preserved in lacquer. He unwrapped it carefully. Inside, the full ritual. Not just the surface rhythm, but the layered formula the monk had created, binding, tethering, amplifying, and at the end, scribbled in blood. To undo this, one must break the rhythm from the inside. My Nim paled. He knew this might happen. Lek stared at the scroll, his fingers trembling, his voice barely audible. So the only way to stop it is to go in? My Nim didn't try to stop him. She only gave him 3 things: a lotus soaked in holy oil, a red thread to tie around his wrist, and a small drum of her own, one that had never been played before. She whispered, "If the rhythm pulls you in, let the drum carry your name back out." That night, Lek stood alone before the great drum. He placed his palm on its surface, felt the breath beneath, and whispered, "Take me." The drum opened, and the world went silent.
There was no sound, no wind, no light. Only the feel of being pulled inward, like breath being drawn into the chest of something immense and unseen. Lek had entered the drum, not just physically, but spiritually. He had become part of its rhythm, its skin, its memory. At first, it was darkness, not the kind behind closed eyes, but the kind that watched back. Then, slowly, faint shapes began to emerge, shadowed outlines suspended in nothing. Drums, dozens of them, some split open, some pulsing gently like hearts still beating long after death, and among them, souls, tethered, twisting, murmuring in a language made entirely of grief. Lek floated among them. He could feel them brushing against his skin, not cold, not warm, just lost. Then he heard a voice, not from outside, from within. "Welcome, child." It was not the monk's voice. It was older, deeper, and it came from all directions at once. "You play the reversal, but you do not understand it." Lek turned in every direction, but saw no one, only more drums. And then a mirror, hanging in the void like a window to something he wasn't meant to see. He stepped toward it. Inside, he saw himself, but changed. His eyes were black. His lips moved on their own, repeating a rhythm without mallets. His body was playing itself. The voice returned. "This is the cost. To reverse the spell, you must become its opposite." "What does that mean?" Lek called out. "It means you must unplay yourself." Suddenly, the parchment from my Nim appeared before him, suspended in air. The reversal pattern. But now he saw it clearly. It wasn't just a rhythm, it was a map. Each beat represented a part of himself, his memory, his name, his love for Molly, his regret, his fear. To play it in reverse was not just to unwind the spell, it was to unmake himself. Lek hesitated. If he did this, he would lose everything. Not die, but dissolve, forget, disappear from all memory, his own and everyone else's. He would become the silence between beats, the one no one noticed. Then he saw her, Molly, suspended at the center of the void, her body cradled by threads of light and ash, her mouth stitched shut with glowing rope, eyes wide, terrified, still tethered, still sinking. He stepped forward, raised his hands, and began to play. The first beat, boom, a piece of his childhood vanished. His father's laugh, gone. The second, boom, boom, he forgot his own name. The third, pause, boom. He no longer remembered why he was here, only that someone needed him. The rhythm accelerated. With each beat, he grew smaller, not in body, but in identity. He became rhythm. He became motion, a sound echoing through a ghost drum. And then everything stopped. Silence. He floated in total stillness, weightless, nameless. But in the center of the void, a crack. Not in a drum,
in the veil. It opened slowly, and a great wind howled through it, a sound not of death, but of release. The souls began to rise. One by one, they floated upward. Some wept, some laughed, some simply dissolved into soft light. And among them, Molly. The ropes around her mouth unraveled. Her hands relaxed. She looked up, saw him, and whispered a word he no longer understood. It might have been thank you, or goodbye, or simply his name, but he couldn't hear it because he was already fading. In the mortal world, my Nim stood alone beside the drum. Its skin had split, the ropes had fallen, and from its cracked shell poured a quiet wind that smelled of lilies and smoke. She listened closely, then lifted the tiny drum Lek had carried into the veil. She tapped it once. A low note rang out, faint, but inside that sound was his name. Just once, enough to echo, enough to carry back. Lek awoke on the temple floor, covered in ash, his hands still trembling, but his face wet with tears, and across from him the great drum, empty, its surface silent, its skin dead. The rhythm had ended. Molly sat beside him, whole, eyes bright and smiling softly. "You came back," she whispered. Lek blinked. "Did I go somewhere?" He didn't remember the void, the rhythm, or the sacrifice, but she did, and that was enough. My Nim burned the final parchment that night, and as its edges curled into flame, she murmured, "No more drums, no more bindings." But somewhere, far beyond the village, in a forest no longer walked by monks or ghosts, a single cracked drum sat half-buried beneath the roots of an old Bodhi tree, and on the wind, a single beat, soft, lonely, listening.
The drum was dead. That's what they all said. Its skin had split, its voice had faded, its beat, finally, was gone. And yet, the rhythm remained, not outside, but inside. Inside Lek. At first, it was subtle. When he walked, his feet tapped in threes. When he breathed, it fell into a rhythm. Boom, boom, pause, boom, matching the ancient beat he had reversed. He didn't notice it until the novice monk beside him flinched one morning during silent prayer. "You're humming," the boy whispered. Lek shook his head. He hadn't made a sound. But then he heard it, a low hum, from his own chest, not his throat, his bones. May Nim confirmed what he feared. She placed her palm against his sternum and closed her eyes. Then she whispered, "You carried something back with you." The reversal had worked. The spirits had been freed. Molly was no longer tethered. But the gate, that veil between the living and the dead, hadn't just been opened. It had passed through him and left a mark, a tattoo of rhythm written in sinew and marrow. That night, Lek dreamed of the drum again, but it was different. This time, it beat with his voice. It whispered words he didn't recognize, but they came from his mouth. It pulsed in time with his heartbeat, and inside it was him. Another version, watching, smiling, keeping beat. He woke screaming. Sweat drenched the floor beneath him. His fingers were clenched as if holding mallets, and his lips were moving, repeating the old chant Fracham once spoke to bind spirits. Word for word,
even though Lek had never learned it. Mei Nim's hands shook as she tied another red thread around his wrist. "It's not possession, it's imprinting," she said. Lek didn't understand. "You didn't just pass through the drum, you became part of it, and it became part of you." Days passed, then weeks, and slowly the rhythm began to change him. He could no longer walk near other drums, small ones used by the children during festivals, even ceremonial ones brought out for temple rites. They trembled when he came close, sometimes cracked, sometimes played on their own. His presence was enough. His aura, as Mei Nim called it. Then he began to remember things he'd never lived, memories that weren't his. A funeral in 1893, a baby drowned in a copper basin, a woman who walked into the fire herself, sobbing as drums played behind her. Lek could see it all, feel it all, because the drum had held those memories, and now so did he. One night Molly found him in the cremation hall. He was sitting in front of the broken drum, not touching it, but swaying, muttering, his eyes rolled back, his mouth dripping ash. "Lek," she whispered. He didn't hear her. She reached out, touched his shoulder, and he turned, not like her brother, but like a stranger, with a voice that wasn't his. "The gate swings both ways, little sister. Don't open it again." She screamed. He collapsed, and when he awoke, he didn't remember a thing. Mei Nim was called immediately. She sat with him as he trembled, her hand pressed to his back. "The monk never left," she said softly. "Pieces of him were in every soul he bound, and when you released them, you pulled his pieces together." Lek stared at her, eyes hollow. "Then what am I now?" She didn't answer, not in words. She took his hand and guided it to a bowl of water. When he looked in, his reflection shifted, flickered. For a moment, it wasn't him. It was Fra Kam, smiling, eyes black. Mei Nim whispered, "You're the drum now." That night, Lek tied his hands with red thread and locked himself in his room. He stuffed cotton in his ears to block the beat inside his skull. He tried not to breathe in rhythm. He tried not to hum, but it didn't help, because the drum didn't need air. It didn't need skin. It only needed sound, and sound was eternal. The next morning, Molly found a message carved in the wall of the cremation hall. It was written in reversed script, unreadable, but Mei Nim could decipher it. She touched the grooves, closed her eyes, then she translated. "I can hold him, but not for long. When the rhythm takes over, burn what remains of the drum, or I will call the dead again." Signed, Lek. Mei Nim stood beside the broken instrument, her hands trembling. It had been part of the temple for generations, an heirloom, a curse, but Lek had given her a choice. Let him fade, or risk everything. She whispered a prayer, lit the oil, and dropped the match. The drum howled, not as wood burns, but as a living thing dying. It split down the middle, and from within, ash. Only ash. No blood, no bone, no spirit. Only silence. Real, empty silence. Lek awoke 3 days later. His voice was gone, his breath shallow, but his heartbeat was no longer music. Only a thud. Mortal, frail, and finally, his own. Molly wept beside him, and for the first time, he smiled, weak but free.
Mei Nim placed the ashes of the drum into a sealed urn. She carved a single word on its lid, "Enough," and buried it beneath the temple floor. Without rhythm, without chant, only stillness. But sometimes, on windless nights, when no one is watching, the wind chimes above the cremation hall sway on their own, and in their soft, broken music, a beat, just one, waiting.
It began with the crows, first one, then another, circling above the temple in a slow, silent spiral. Then they began falling, not flying down, dropping, dead before they hit the earth. By the 7th day, over 50 black bodies littered the courtyard, and none of them had eyes. The monks said nothing. Their chants grew softer, shorter, more uncertain. 2 had already left the temple in the middle of the night, robes discarded, offerings returned, refusing to look back. Even the villagers whispered that the temple had gone sour, that it had soaked in death for too long. Some blamed the drum, others blamed Lek. Only Mei Nim spoke the truth. "The gate is no longer inside the drum," she said. "It's beneath us now, and it's opening." Lek could feel it too, even though the drum had burned to ash, even though the rituals were reversed, even though his own body no longer echoed with that cursed rhythm. Something had remained, a residue, like smoke after a fire. The veil had thinned. That night, he dreamed again, but not of the void. This dream was too real. He walked through the temple, its halls cracked and bleeding. The Buddha statues had been turned to face the walls. The monks were headless. The bells rang without ropes. And in the center of the cremation hall, a door. Not wooden, not metal, but made of breath. It pulsed like a lung. And behind it, he heard them. The spirits, all of them. Every soul the monk had ever bound, every soul the reversal had freed, and something else, something older, something waiting. He awoke with blood on his pillow, not his own, just blood. The next morning, the temple floor split open. A crack, thin as a knife's edge, ran from the altar to the center of the cremation hall. No quake had caused it, no weather. It simply appeared. And from within it, a sound. Not loud, not violent, just a heartbeat. Slow, unstoppable, calling. Mei Nim knelt beside it, pressed her ear to the stone, listened, then stood, her face pale. "It's not just the monk," she said softly. "He called something through, something that was never human, something that wants a body." Lek looked at the others, Molly, the remaining monks, even the headmen of the village who had come to offer rice and prayers. They all stared at the crack, and for the first time, everyone agreed. The temple was cursed. But curses only live when fed, and someone had to starve it. That night, Lek returned to the site of Molly's cremation. He walked barefoot, alone, carrying nothing but a candle and the small hand drum Mei Nim had given him long ago. The moon was full, but its light was wrong, too pale, too still, as if even it feared what was about to happen. He sat cross-legged in the ashes, lit the candle, closed his eyes, and began to play. Not the monk's rhythm, not the reversal, but something new, something born of what he'd seen, what he'd become. It was clumsy at first, but honest, a rhythm not of control,
but of release. The earth trembled, the crack widened, and from within it, smoke. But not smoke made of fire. It writhed, it hissed, it spoke without words. Lek didn't stop. He kept playing, even as the smoke formed shapes, bodies, faces, some human, some not. Molly ran toward him, screaming for him to stop, but May Nim held her back. "He knows what he's doing," she whispered. "He's not playing to summon, he's playing to seal." The spirit surged upward. Some wailed, some clawed at the ground, begging not to be sent back. And one among them, tall, robed, face hidden behind cracked gold leaf, the monk, Prakam. He stepped forward, but this time, he wasn't smiling. His mouth was gone, replaced by a drum carved into his chest, beating, bleeding, begging. "You took them from me," he hissed, voice trembling with centuries of fury. "I built a kingdom of souls, and you burned it." Lek opened his eyes, met the gaze of what remained of the man, and whispered, "Then I'll bury your throne." He struck the drum one final time, not loud, not angry, just one beat, a farewell. The smoke screamed, the monk convulsed, the crack in the earth sealed itself, not with stone, but with silence. And just like that, they were gone. The sky lightened, birdsong returned, and for the first time in a month, the air didn't hum. Lek collapsed, exhausted, but alive. May Nim came to him, wrapped him in her shawl. "You closed the gate, but something was left behind." Lek looked up, confused, and then he understood. The drum may have died, the crack may have sealed, but he had played a new rhythm, one that had never existed before. And rhythm always echoes. The village temple had stood for over 200 years, through storms, through famine, through war. It had withstood everything the living could throw at it, but it had never faced what Lek brought back from the other side. In the days following the closing of the crack, things seemed quiet, too quiet. The monks resumed their chanting, but it lacked spirit. The bells rang on schedule, but the sound no longer reached the birds. Even the prayer flags, once fluttering above the temple courtyard, now hung motionless in the wind, as if afraid to draw attention. Only May Nim could feel what stirred beneath the stillness. She walked the temple grounds each morning barefoot, touching the walls, whispering into corners, feeding rice to shadows. "Something is still here," she murmured. "Not a ghost, not a god, just memory, and memory can burn." Lek tried to go back to normal. He swept the halls, he lit incense, he prayed, but everything was hollow. His sleep was dreamless, his voice never returned, and sometimes he caught Molly watching him, not with worry, but with recognition, as if she saw someone else standing in her brother's place. One night, a novice monk screamed during meditation. He tore off his robes, clawed at his chest, and began pounding his fists against the ground, mimicking the reversal rhythm with terrifying precision. When the others tried to restrain him, he bit one of them, drawing blood. His mouth moved with a voice that wasn't his. "Let me out! Let me out! The drum is still breathing." He was locked away, But he wasn't the last. Soon the other monks began hearing it too, a low beat pulsing through the floor, the rhythm of something that refused to die. May Nim gathered them all in the central hall. She did not ask, she commanded. Even the elders obeyed. We burned the body, but not the pattern. The monk's rhythm still lives in the stones, in the wood, in every corner that ever echoed his sound. "Then what do we do?" asked one of the frightened monks. She looked at Lek, and Lek understood. That night they prepared for the final rite, not of cleansing, not of silence, but of destruction. Lek walked through the temple one last time, his hand brushing the pillars he'd grown up around, the courtyard where he'd played with Molly as a boy, the prayer books he once helped copy by candlelight. But none of it felt like home anymore. The temple had become a resonance chamber, and it was no longer echoing prayer, it was echoing him. May Nim poured oil along the thresholds. The monks scattered offerings, eggs, salt, lemongrass into every corner. Molly stood at the edge of the courtyard, holding the urn of the burned drum ashes, her hands trembling. And at midnight, they lit the first flame. The fire began slowly, respectfully, but then the walls caught, and the smoke changed. Not black, not gray, but red, a color not meant for fire. And from within the flames, the drums returned, not in form, in sound, beating wildly as the temple burned, as if screaming in protest or celebration. The air was filled with heat, ash, and rhythm. Some monks fell to their knees, covering their ears, weeping. Others began to chant, not from memory, but from possession. May Nim struck her own drum once, just once, and their voices stopped. And into that silence, Lek stepped forward, toward the fire, toward the sound. He reached the altar before the roof collapsed. There, lying untouched by flame, sat Pra Kam's old robes, still folded, still soaked in the essence of what he had done. Lek knelt, touched them, and whispered, "This ends with me." The fire roared, the walls gave in, and the sky lit up orange and gold as centuries of ritual and rot turned to smoke. The great Bodhi tree beside the temple remained untouched, as if even nature knew it needed to remain witness. By morning, all that was left was cinders and silence, real silence, not the kind that waits, but the kind that follows an ending. The monks were scattered, the temple was no more, and Lek was gone. They searched for him, among the ashes, in the village, in the forest, but he had vanished without a trace. Only Molly believed, because on the final night, just before dawn, she found something outside her door, a single offering bowl. Inside it, 3 lotus petals and a thread of red silk.
Lek opened his eyes to a sky that didn't move. No clouds, no wind, no sun, just a vast, unmoving canopy of gray. He was standing barefoot in a field of ash, not burned, just old, ancient. The kind of ash that came from memories, not fire. And beneath the surface, the ground pulsed softly,
like something sleeping just below. He had no body, no breath, but he still was, still aware, still remembering. For now. But even that felt temporary, as if his sense of self were slowly evaporating, like mist at dawn. This was the place between worlds, a place not meant to be entered by the living, not meant to be remembered by the dead, the field of the forgotten. Lek walked. Each step echoed with sounds that didn't belong to him. Children crying, monks chanting backward, the snap of rope beneath a temple rafter, the crackle of a funeral drum torn from the inside. He was not alone here, but no one walked beside him. The field stretched endlessly, filled with unmoving shapes. Some sat, some knelt, some stood as if frozen mid-prayer. All of them were unfinished, forgotten souls, ones whose rites were never completed, whose stories were never told, whose deaths were inconvenient. He wandered past a man with no mouth, clutching a prayer book, missing every other page. A child whose shadow followed someone else. A woman made of lotus petals that bled when touched. They didn't look at him. They only listened, because he carried the rhythm with him still. The same rhythm that once trapped them, and now offered them a way out. In the distance, a drum beat once, but it wasn't the monk's rhythm. It was his, the one he had created in the final ritual. New, imperfect, human. And the field shuddered. The souls began to stir, not violently, but expectantly. Hope in this place was dangerous. It made things unstable. It made the ground forget it was supposed to hold them. Then he saw her, Molly, standing at the edge of the ash, wrapped in pale light, whole, free. But her face was tight with worry. "Why are you here?" she asked. He tried to answer, but no words came, only beats. She heard them and understood. "You stayed too long," she whispered. "The gate took more than your name this time." He nodded. He could feel it. Memories slipping like sand between his fingers. Even now he struggled to remember her name, his own, where he had come from. But one thing remained. He had come to finish it. Behind Molly, the fog shifted. A figure approached. Not monstrous, not twisted. Just a man, wearing old monk's robes, carrying no mallets, only silence. Pra-kam. But this time, he wasn't angry. He was tired, bones bent by centuries of consequence. His voice, when it came, was almost gentle. "You've undone everything I built, and I understand now why you had to." Lex said nothing. He couldn't. Prakam walked closer, kneeling beside one of the forgotten souls, a child with eyes sewn shut.
He touched the child's forehead, and the stitches fell away. "I was trying to protect them, but I only imprisoned them," he whispered. Molly stepped forward. "Can they leave?" Prakam nodded slowly. "If someone plays the rhythm of release one final time." He looked at Lek. "But it must be played by someone who knows what it means to stay behind." Lek understood. He was not going back. He had crossed the line too many times. He had become the drum, the rhythm, the silence. He had become the ferryman. Prakam placed a single drum in front of him. Small, plain, untouched by magic, just wood and skin. But when Lek picked it up, it beat on its own, not with power, but with peace. He began to play. The field shifted, the fog thinned. One by one, the forgotten began to walk, slowly, as if remembering how. Their faces softened, their bodies uncurled. They stepped forward, not into light, but into sound. His sound, a rhythm that wasn't meant to trap or control, just guide. And when the last one stepped through, Lek placed the drum down gently and closed his eyes. Molly turned to him. Tears streaked her cheeks, but she did not stop him, only held his hand. "I'll remember for both of us," she whispered. "I'll carry your name back." And when she stepped into the veil, the field collapsed into stillness, leaving only silence and one last echo. The field was gone. The forgotten had crossed, and still Lek remained, alone. Not because he was trapped, but because the rhythm was not finished. Not yet. One beat remained, the final echo, the closing of the circle. He stood in a space without time, where sound was the only thing that lived. It curled around him like mist. Each note from the drum he had played still floated gently in the air, glowing like embers, pulsing like fireflies suspended in dusk. Each one held a story, a name, a soul now set free. But there was no joy, only weight, because something had to hold the silence once the sound was gone. And that something was him. He looked down at the drum in his hands. It was fading, the wood turning to smoke, the skin unraveling into strands of light. Its purpose was almost complete. One beat left. But he hesitated, because he knew what the final note would do. It would not seal just the gate, it would seal him. He sat on the nothingness beneath him, and for a while he listened to silence, to peace, to the absence of suffering. He thought of Molly, of the boy he had been, of the monk who had lost his way, and he understood now. Rituals weren't dangerous because they summoned spirits. They were dangerous because they left something behind, an echo, a hunger, an expectation, and someone always had to clean up the last sound. He struck the drum once. The note was unlike any he had played before. It didn't echo, it absorbed, pulled in the remaining threads, tucked them away, softly, lovingly, like a mother tucking a child into bed. And then the drum dissolved in his hands. No ash, no blood, just stillness. From somewhere far away, he heard wind, real wind, the kind that rustled trees and temple bells. He closed his eyes and allowed himself to forget. In the waking world, the temple ruins were quiet. No sound had come from them since the night the fires swallowed everything. The villagers kept their distance. The ground was cold, but not cursed, just still. Until one morning, as dew clung to the leaves and the sky blushed pale blue, Mali returned. She knelt in the center of what had once been the cremation hall. The air smelled of old smoke and memory. And there, buried just beneath the surface, she found it, a single stone, carved with one symbol, a beat, a circle cracked down the center, etched with 3 simple lines. She touched it and felt his heartbeat one last time, just once. She pressed her forehead to the stone and whispered, "Thank you." Not for saving her, not for saving the spirits, but for choosing to stay when everyone else left. She returned each year, on the 7th day of the 7th month, always alone, always barefoot. She brought no offerings, only silence, because she knew that was what he had become. Not a ghost, not a god, just silence between rhythms, the keeper of the last beat. And on windless nights, when even the crickets paused, the air would thrum once gently, like a drum struck with no hand, and then quiet again. The villagers would stop what they were doing and listen, not in fear, but in memory, because they knew that somewhere just beyond the veil, Lek was still listening.
Years passed. The temple was never rebuilt. Its ashes were left untouched, vines reclaiming the land little by little. The village elders said it was better this way, that some grounds should remain still, that some sounds should be left unheard. Children were warned not to play drums after dark, not to mimic the beat that once echoed through the trees. Even the wind seemed careful, brushing only the tops of the grass, never disturbing the silence below. Because silence in Ban Nong Luang was sacred now. It had been paid for, with rhythm and with memory. Molly never left the village. She built a small home on the edge of the rice fields where the temple roof once caught fire. She lived simply, spoke little. Each morning, she knelt at the patch of earth where she'd found the carved stone, the one with the symbol of a broken beat, and pressed her fingers to it, never to wake what rested beneath, only to remember. Because memory, she learned, was its own kind of ritual. Some nights she would hear it, a single thump on the wind, too faint to call a sound, more like a suggestion, a memory of rhythm. Not a call, not a warning, just presence.
as if Lek was still there, watching, waiting, listening. The villagers noticed too, but no one spoke of it directly. They only nodded quietly when the air grew heavy. They left offerings by the path, small things, a white flower, a pinch of rice, a drop of oil. Not to ask for blessings, but to offer thanks to the boy who became a bridge. A new monk came years later, young, from the city, bright eyes. He asked about the ruins, the silence, the strange way the older villagers seemed to pause whenever a bell rang. He was told stories, whispers, of a cursed drum, of a monk who played with spirits, of a boy who walked into the veil and never came back. The monk didn't believe it, of course, but out of respect, he never built on the temple ruins. Instead, he planted a tree, a Bodhi, and around its roots he placed smooth river stones, each one carved with a rhythm. 3 short lines, 1 pause, 1 break. Years later, a traveler passed through Bon Nong Luang. He brought with him a camera, a journal, and curiosity. He wandered the edge of the village and found the old Bodhi tree, felt drawn to it. He sat beneath it, and for a brief moment, he thought he heard a sound, a drum beat, very faint, 1 note, carried through the roots, rising from the earth like a breath long held. When he asked the villagers about it, they smiled politely. "There is no drum," they said. "There hasn't been one for a long time." But that night, as the traveler slept in a borrowed room, he dreamed of a boy, barefoot, eyes closed, holding a drum carved from light, not playing it, just holding it, waiting. When he woke, he couldn't remember the dream, only the feeling it left behind, that someone had protected this place, not with weapons, not with walls, but with rhythm. And back beneath the tree, buried deep in the soil, far from where anyone would ever disturb it again, lay the final fragment of the broken drum, still, silent, untouched, a vessel that once held screams, now cradling peace. Because sometimes the most sacred sound is the one that no longer needs to be heard.